So I said we were going to have another Vancouver Canucks related conversation to end off today's show. And that's exactly what we're doing right here. Because I wanted to go over some of the notes and talking points that have been presented over the past few days in regards to the Vancouver Canucks and a potential Elias Pettersson trade. Now, this isn't the newest piece of information we have had. A lot of this does stem from things that we had heard over the past few days here, but hey, if we wanted to go off of recent info, literally yesterday, Jim Rutherford said on the 100% Hockey podcast that Elias Pettersson had left Vancouver and gone back to Sweden. So there you go. That's our headline. We could have titled this video, Elias Pettersson officially decides to leave Vancouver. And it wouldn't have been wrong. But in this video, we're not talking about Pettersson leaving. Yeah, sure, he's going back to Sweden, that's fine. I wanted to go over some of the trade conversations about PD that have kind of been in the background for most of this 24-25 season. Because everybody will go out there and tell you that Elias Pettersson sucked this year and he wasn't really himself and he wasn't playing well under Rick Tocchet and yada yada yada, the Miller feud, this and that. The idea of an Elias Pettersson trade has been present for most of the year, and a lot of that has to do with July 1st being Pettersson's no-move date. Starting July 1st, he will have control as to whether or not he gets traded in the first place and where to. For right now, and the next few days before July 1st, Elias Pettersson is fair game. He could get traded at the draft, and it would technically be allowed. Let's start this conversation off by reading a tweet posted by Adam Kierszenblat on Twitter yesterday. This was about a lot of the Pettersson trade discussion. There's lots of talk today. Multiple times this year, though, I was told by people who work around the league that trading Pettersson would be Cam Neely 2.0. This is a good example of how perception is different in Vancouver compared to around the NHL. Even worse than a Cam Neely 2.0, because Elias Pettersson had a 100-point season already before being traded, Ian said. Another reply here from Peter says, if you see any comparison between Cam Neely and Elias Pettersson, you did not see Cam play. Honestly, Adam, be better than this. This is not comparing their play style, rather the impact it would have on the organizations involved. Honestly, Peter, be better than this. You still don't get it, do you? You still don't get it, do you? Okay, let's not read the sarcastic replies in the comment section. Obviously, this discussion is not saying that Pettersson is Neely. Neely was a lot more of a physical force, and of course he's a Hall of Famer, Boston Bruins legend, and a former Vancouver Canucks draftee. Cam Neely is not Elias Pettersson. They don't play the same. It's just the impact and the magnitude of importance that these players could have on their teams. Cam Neely was a first-liner, Hall of Fame guy, over point-per-game stud in the playoffs, and Elias Pettersson, at his best, could potentially do that too. Again, not in the same way, but just in terms of the overall points and the meaning of their teams. If folks around the NHL are already believing that an Elias Pettersson trade could be Cam Neely 2.0 for the Vancouver Canucks, it does go to show you just the market sentiment here. We had seen throughout the course of the season some insiders saying that, oh yeah, I wouldn't touch Elias Pettersson with a 10-foot pole. Other NHL GMs are worried about trading for Pettersson because he's playing poorly, and he's this, and he's that. But I feel like now, especially over the past few months where we've seen a lot more conversation about what happened behind the scenes and the JT Miller feud and what Pettersson was going through last offseason, the injuries, this and that, with more of a spotlight being shined on those aspects of Pettersson's 24-25, I feel like negative sentiment on PD is starting to wane a little bit. Sure, there are the folks that are going to call this guy out and talk about how he is ineffective and how he falls too much and he's not seeing the ice well, etc., etc. These are all valid criticisms, but I feel like we have more breathing room as Canucks fans to internalize the way Pettersson played. And now, hearing that folks from around the NHL are not really thinking about Pettersson as harshly as Canucks fans are, it kind of does paint a better picture when you think about Pettersson's future. Now, sure, this absolutely does not discredit the idea of a trade being possible. It's still there. It can happen. But I wanted to refer to the trade discussion that we had from last year that apparently Francesco Aquilini went out there and rejected. We had learned over the past few days that apparently the Vancouver Canucks almost traded Elias Pettersson for Martin Necas of the Carolina Hurricanes a year ago. Tocchet apparently wanted Pettersson out too. But Aquilini stepped in, he said no, re-signed that guy, and the Vancouver Canucks ended up re-signing Pettersson instead of trading him, which was a decision that, according to Kevin Woodley on Sportsnet 650, may have led Rick Tocchet to wanting to leave just a little bit more. Here's a tweet from Arpon on BC. It's Dolly Wall on 650 yesterday. The Necas Petey deal would have flipped everything. And the top reply goes out there and says, we would still have Miller and a contending team. Yeah, Miller would have stayed. And Tocchet would have stayed, and the Canucks would not have sucked. The question is whether or not this really would have worked, and honestly, I'm not convinced either way. Like, I can understand the perspective that says, hey, Pettersson and Necas, they're not really too different in terms of their playing styles. Martin Necas, it's not like he's a JT Miller type. He's a lot more slow the game down, make a pretty play, make a fancy deke, make a pass, make a scoring chance happen out of nothing kind of guy, and he has a lot of offensive IQ to his game. JT Miller, I feel, is a lot more of a straight-line, no-nonsense offensive forward who just happens to be really, really good at passing. So the debate as to whether or not Martin Necas would have worked with JT Miller, some are going out there and challenging it, others are saying that it would have been a good idea. Surrey Canucks says no way Necas would have worked with Miller. And would people be happy with Kotkaniemi as the second-line center? Top reply here says that if they traded Pettersson, they would have been able to keep Elias Lindstrom as the second-line center due to the extra cap space. And that, I think, also does flip itself in over its head, too. If you traded Pettersson before the trade deadline, in a season where the Vancouver Canucks were doing so well, and Pettersson was just starting to falter off a little bit, if the Canucks trade Pettersson for Necas and Kotkaniemi, they keep Elias Lindstrom, and all of a sudden this year, there is a Necas, Lindstrom, Kotkaniemi addition onto the forward core and you replace Pettersson with Miller? Honestly, I do think the team looks a bit better on paper, just when you think about the assets. And I think a lot of that does have to do with recency bias. A lot of that is saying, hey, Miller is still productive in New York. He was a 100-point guy last year. Pettersson absolutely was not anywhere near that in the second half of the season, and he was just totally invisible in the playoffs. So while I do question the fit as to whether or not Necas would have excelled under a Tocchet system with Miller as a teammate, I don't discredit that the Vancouver Canucks probably do look a bit better. If you don't have Elias Pettersson, and JT Miller on the team, in the summer last year, you're probably able to make a better pitch to Lindstrom and say, yeah, we're going to give you this money, 7-point-something million, and you get to play second-line C. He probably stays at that point. The Canucks offered him a lot of money. He just wanted a top center spot, and he wasn't able to get that in Vancouver. But now, you think about it, yeah, Lindstrom, probably better than Elias Pettersson in terms of his overall skill set. Pettersson, of course, has a much higher offensive ceiling and dynamic playmaking capacity to his game than Lindstrom does. But Lindstrom is a guy who kind of does everything else well, and especially in a season like this, where Pettersson's top tools were not really showing off all too well, yeah, sure, he was a pretty good defensive player, that Elias Pettersson was, but if Elias Lindstrom can do the same thing for a cheaper cost, and maybe even add on more offense if he gets more of a top spot in Vancouver, you kind of have a formula that I think works a little bit better. And you add on Martin Necas, you add on Kotkaniemi as a third-line center or whatever, all of a sudden that's your Pius Suter replacement. There are a number of things that would make this team a lot better if you just made that Pettersson trade. And now I'm really starting to feel it, man. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this failed Vancouver Canucks trade that did not go through, and what are your thoughts on how Elias Pettersson and Martin Necas would have changed the entire fortune for this Vancouver Canucks squad this year? Do you think Necas would have been a good player alongside of JT Miller? Do you think that Elias Lindstrom would have stuck around? Let me know in the comment section all your opinions. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.